Welcome to Anti-Woke and Autistic. Aubrey Hoffer is a fat acceptance influencer on TikTok. She has some very interesting things to say here, and I'm gonna shut them down.
Sometimes I make content that counters the messaging that I heard constantly as a child. And unfortunately, beliefs that are still prevalent today, like this belief that being fat is a terrible thing and that you will not be able to be.
It is a terrible thing. Fatness, it is a terrible thing because it could prevent you from doing so many wonderful things. Now, I don't ride horses, but horseback riding brings tremendous joy to so many people. But there's a weight limit, or else you'll crush the horse. You won't be able to ride a horse if you're over a certain weight. And if the ability to ride a horse is taken away from somebody who really loves doing that, I mean, that's going to impact their life very negatively. So, that alone, something like that alone, if being fat prevents you from conducting a hobby that you just absolutely love, that enthralls you, it could be skiing or kayaking or something like that, where a fat person just simply would not be able to do it. And what if you do more than one activity like that? What if you're a kayaker, a skier, and a horseback rider, and you spend a good amount of time doing those activities, and then you start gaining weight and you go from, let's say, 150 or 170, and you're a woman of average height, and you get up to 250 or even 220, you're going to have a really hard time doing those things. Well, you won't be able to horseback ride, that's for sure. I don't know if how big kayaks are made. I'm not experienced with kayaking and skiing. I'm not a skier. I'm sure there are fat people who ski, but there's a limit eventually. What if you love to travel by plane? You have to travel by plane and you're just freaking fat. Travel's going to be difficult for you. Hotel room accommodations are going to be difficult for you. The toilets are made for regular sized people. If you're as big as a house, if you're morbidly obese, you're just going to feel like you're going to be uncomfortable on the toilet. The towels won't be big enough to wrap around your body. It just goes on and on and on. And it's not society's fault. Society was not made for fat people, and it shouldn't be made for fat people because it would be incredibly expensive for consumers if society was built for fat people, or size inclusive, as the saying goes. Obesity makes it difficult just doing day to day activities that we all take for granted. You know, if you're physically fit, okay, even if you're out of shape, but if you're not fat, you can still get in and out of the car without any problem, even if you never exercise, because you really need to be decently able-bodied and not huge to be able to get in and out of a car. What if you have a lot of errands one day and you're just scooting around your car all day? You got kids to pick up, kids to drop off here and there, and just maybe you drive for a living, you're a salesperson or whatever. And imagine how difficult all of that would be if you were morbidly obese. But people of regular normal size, or even just a little bit overweight, they don't think about things like that because they take it for granted. But a fat person can't even bend over to pick something off the floor if they're seated because their stomach gets in the way. It's uncomfortable. They have to force themselves down. It feels like they're being asphyxiated almost. They have sleep apnea. Hey, listen, Aubrey, morbid obesity or even just regular obesity is a huge risk factor or causative agent for obstructive sleep apnea. Do you think it's fun? Do you think it's a picnic having to rely on a CPAP machine during sleep? You got to keep that thing clean. You got to clean it and sanitize it all the time so it doesn't get bacteria, so you're not breathing in bacteria, getting bacteria down your throat. I mean, there's a whole maintenance upkeep for a CPAP machine. You gotta look at the numbers every morning to see if it was working because you can't tell if it was working overnight. You gotta see, make sure it's working. What if it's malfunctioning? Sometimes they're noisy. I mean, there are just so many things that come with obesity that people of normal weight who are never obese, or people who are just a little bit overweight, never think about or consider because we take all of these things that we do so easily for granted, like sleeping, getting in and out of cars, chasing the kids around all day, just running up and down the stairs, carrying laundry baskets. Don't say that obesity is not a terrible thing. It's a horrible thing. And I'm not even, have you noticed that I have not once mentioned looks or appearance or difficulty getting dates? I didn't even go in that vicinity. I'm just listing all the things relating to the activities of daily living and hobbies. Hey, I once went to a cavern, and to get up to the entrance of the cavern, caverns are underground, but believe it or not, the entrance, you had to go up this many stairs. I think kind of like the equivalent of 5 flights of standard stairs. There were steps outside to get in. And at the top was this entrance. I swear it was only this wide. So a tall man he would have to go sideways in. But if you were obese, an obese person would not have fit through. I mean, it's just all these little things that add up.
A happy or fulfilled person if you have a fat body.
Okay, so she says you wouldn't, it's a myth that you wouldn't be able to be happy if you were fat. If I were fat, if many people were fat, they would not be happy because, like I said before, they wouldn't be able to do so many things, not just elective activities like horseback riding or kayaking or skiing or inline skating or skateboarding or whatever it is they like to do, but the activities of daily life would be impacted. People who have been obese, fat, morbidly obese for a long, long time, especially since childhood, don't realize just how much easier basic living would be if they were of a normal size. So when they tell you, oh, I don't have any problem, they are so used to having difficulty with the activities of daily living. They're so used to it, they're desensitized to it. They've been having difficulty doing things, the tasks of everyday life, for so long that they've become desensitized to that difficulty. And it's common for people who have lost 100 pounds to say that they never knew how difficult it was to be obese, especially morbidly obese, until they lost 100 pounds. And then, wow, everything is so much easier. They say, I never knew movement could be so much easier, and breathing could be so much easier, and getting in and out of bed and showering and leaning over to wash my hair and everything would be so much easier. I never knew that because I was so used to being fat, and I had been fat for so long that I just never knew what I was missing. There's no such thing as going through life physically easily when you're as big as a cow, especially over age 30 or 35, because it really quickly catches up to you once you get past a certain age.
That is not true. It's certainly not true of all people. And here's the thing. If you're somebody where you are like, my weight is the number one thing making me unhappy and I need to pursue weight loss in order to be a happy, fulfilled person, cool. But I just encourage people to unpack, what do you actually think that weight loss is going to give you? And is it weight loss itself that's going to give you that? Because frankly, no amount of weight loss is going to change your worth as a human being. All bodies are worthy of love and respect.
This is not about worth as a human being. You see how they twist things? It's about functionality in the daily tasks of living. It's about being able to access activities. It's being able to do all the little things that add up to a really nice life. Being able to ride a roller coaster with your child. Not that you have to do that every week, but it's just one of those things that comes up. And then, of course, there are the everyday things or the things that occur several times a week that are predictable, that if you're fat, it's going to be difficult. It's going to take you longer to complete. There are people, something, it is said that money cannot buy happiness, but anybody who believes money cannot buy happiness has never seen a child playing with his new puppy. It's a similar train of thought when we say when the idea of being losing weight will not bring happiness. It sure as heck will. It'll enable you to run around with your new puppy. It'll enable you to take your new dog on long hikes. You gotta walk up and down and walk on rough terrain. You can do so many things. That alone can significantly improve the quality of living. Now, will it cure a person of childhood trauma, the wounds left over from that, the marks left over from that? No, it won't. Will it cure their, I don't know, whatever problem they're having? Like if they've had disastrous romances and they're still reeling from a lot of broken relationships, will 100 pound, 150 pound weight loss cure the psychology of that? No, of course not. But when you feel that you could physically do anything, doggone it, that really adds a wonderful new dimension to your life. If you have back problems, I mean, some people have to quit work and go on disability if they have back problems. And yeah, there are thin people with back problems. But if you're fat, you're more likely, I got to say it again, more likely to develop back problems eventually. And when you have a screwed up back, that really screws up your life. Ask anybody with chronic back pain. You know what this fat acceptance does? They twist things around and they always steer it towards worthiness. Aren't you sick of hearing all this talk already about worthiness? And these fat acceptance people, they'll show a picture of themselves when they were younger and not fat. And below it, the caption will say, worthy. And then they'll show a picture of their present day fat body. And the caption will say, just as worthy. Fuck worthiness. This is about mobility. It's about physical comfort or discomfort. It's about stamina or panting, getting out of breath at every move. It's about ambulation. It's about mobility. It's about, do you want chronic pain? Do you want to have a situation that dramatically increases your risk for chronic pain? Don't you dare tell me, well, thin people can be sick. Thin people can be in pain all the time. Yeah, they could. But imagine if a thin person who's sick and has chronic pain for whatever reason starts gaining weight because they're eating and eating and eating, and that 140 pound, 5'7" 5'7" woman, 5'7", 140, is now 240. If you think that's not going to make a tremendous difference in a very negative way, you completely have your head buried in sludge. Get out of there. Get out of there and face reality. No matter what person's situation, whether they're already sick or whether they're at risk for being sick for some unrelated reason, if they get fat, they're going to be so much worse because of that. And if you're already fat and you have pain or issues and you lose weight in a healthy, sustainable, non gimmicky way, you will be so much better off. It might not cure your problem. It depends on what the cause is. But come on, it's common sense. Let's just suppose you have a genetic hereditary cause of some kind of structural defect in your knees. I mean, come on, this is first grade stuff. If you weigh 240, your knees are going to be in a lot more pain, a lot more unstable. You're going to have much more difficulty walking than if you were 150 pounds. This is all common sense. So, yes, obesity, if I were fat, it would absolutely destroy my life. I love being able to jump, to leap, to run. I love being able to know that I can run down the stairs like a jaguar if the building's on fire, if a house is on fire. I love knowing that if I see somebody tampering with my car and I'm 75 yards away, I can bolt towards them like a rocket. I'm not saying I'm superhuman, but if I were obese, I'd consider myself disabled. I would consider myself disabled. I like knowing that I can keep up with kids. If I'm at an amusement park with children, with kids, I can keep up with them. I don't have to say, kids, wait up, wait up. Oh, my aching back. It's not a coincidence that I don't have, it's not a coincidence that I do not have any of these problems. It all goes back to working out, eating right, being physically fit, and not being overweight. Fatness would absolutely destroy me and make me so miserable. Pardon me if I don't want obstructive sleep apnea. Pardon me if I don't want my brain to be deprived of oxygen from obstructive sleep apnea. If I were fat, now I might not get obstructive sleep apnea if I were fat, but my chances of getting that would be dramatically increased. But if I were fat, there's a lot of things I wouldn't be able to do. I wouldn't be able to rock wall climb. I love climbing walls. You never see fat people climbing at a climbing gym. I mean, fat people. I mean, yeah, I've seen husky people at a climbing gym, thick people, plus size, but I've never seen fat, like morbidly obese people because it's impossible for them to do that. I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to run up and down staircases without getting out of breath. There's so many things I wouldn't be able to do. And because of that, I would be one miserable, miserable human being. This has got nothing to do with self worth, worthiness. Stop steering it in that direction. It's not about worth, it's about health, longevity, mobility, aging gracefully rather than aging painfully. That's the message for today. Have a sensational day. I can bolt towards them like a rocket. I'm not saying I'm superhuman, but if I were obese, I'd consider myself disabled. I would consider myself disabled. I like knowing that I can keep up with kids. If I'm at an amusement park with children, with kids, I can keep up with them. I don't have to say, kids, wait up, wait up. Oh, my aching back. It's not a coincidence that I don't have, it's not a coincidence that I do not have any of these problems. It all goes back to working out, eating right, being physically fit, and not being overweight. Fatness would absolutely destroy me and make me so miserable. Pardon me if I don't want obstructive sleep apnea. Pardon me if I don't want my brain to be deprived of oxygen from obstructive sleep apnea overnight. Did you know that untreated obstructive sleep apnea, which by the way is much more, sleep apnea is much more common in fat people than in non overweight people. It does have other causes. You could be thin and have sleep apnea. Smoking and drinking late at night inflames the pharyngeal tissue, the throat tissue, and can swell things up when you're sleeping. So, yeah, there are other causes besides obesity than, or excuse me, there are other causes of sleep apnea than obesity. But if you're fat, you really put yourself at much greater risk for obesity, especially if you have a pre-existing. But if you're fat, you really do have a dramatically increased risk of developing obstructive sleep apnea, especially if you have a naturally big tongue, like the base of your tongue is naturally big, or if you have naturally large adenoids or something like that. Now, untreated sleep apnea can cause daytime symptoms that can mimic ADHD. It can mimic ADHD. Well, I'm not going to apologize if I don't want to be irritable and have difficulty focusing and concentrating and be jittery during the day because my brain was deprived of oxygen overnight due to obstructive sleep apnea. If I were fat, now I might not get obstructive sleep apnea if I were fat, but my chances of getting that would be dramatically increased. But if I were fat, there's a lot of things I wouldn't be able to do. I wouldn't be able to rock wall climb. I love climbing walls. You never see fat people climbing at a climbing gym. I mean fat people. I mean, yeah, I've seen husky people at a climbing gym, thick people, plus size, but I've never seen fat, like morbidly obese people because it's impossible for them to do that. I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to run up and down staircases without getting out of breath. There's so many things I wouldn't be able to do. And because of that, I would be one miserable, miserable human being. This has got nothing to do with self worth, worthiness. Stop staring at it. Stop steering it in that direction. It's not about worth. It's about health, longevity, mobility, aging gracefully rather than aging painfully. That's the message for today. Have a sensational day.